Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to part 7 here of our multiplayer game with Unity and Node.js. Today we're going to be going over when bullets collide with a player, adding a health mechanic, like just very simplistic. And then when the player dies, we're going to stop them from showing on the screen. We're going to wait 3 seconds and then have them respawn. Alright, let's get started. So the idea for the respawn right now is that we're just going to kind of give a random point. And once you guys kind of figure that out, then if you guys want to go add like spawns for teams or whatever, then you guys can go do that as well. Okay, so we're going to be doing a lot of stuff server side today. So the first thing we're going to do is open up our index JS and our player JS. Those are the two that we're going to be modifying today. Cool. Okay, so in order to handle death in health and stuff, we're going to have to store a little bit of more information inside the player itself. So the first thing we're going to add is health. And just for simplistic sake, we're going to just set the health to 100. Just kind of think of it as a percent. You can go higher if you want. It really doesn't matter. In Tiny Dungeoneers, like you have like 14,000 health. Like it doesn't matter. Same concept applies basically. If you get down to 0, you're dead. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a simplistic flag just to check if they are dead. So this is more going to be used inside like our main server area just to know if this player itself is dead and if we should be trying to respawn it. Okay, so we're going to have 2 timers. One's going to be called a respawn ticker. Basically, if I go back to... Let me finish this. If I go back to the index, we have an interval that runs every 100 milliseconds, right? So after this is ran, this set interval is ran 10 times. It's been 1 second. So the idea of the respawn ticker is instead of creating another interval, we'll just call this like our loop, our server loop. If we call the respawn player here, then we know if we do it 10 times, it'll be 1 second. So if I have a ticker that just counts to 10, then we know when I reach 10, it's 1 second. And it doesn't matter if I started halfway through, at 0.5 seconds. Like if you had an interval that only ran every second, you can have a player that spawns at 3.5. You can have a player that spawns at 2.5 based on when that interval started and they died. So this way just kind of adds like a little bit like more accurate, that it's going to be more 3 seconds or very, very close. So we're going to have the ticker. That guy's going to count to 10. The second thing we're going to add here is the respawn time. And this is just like your standard counter. We're going to count to 3 for 3 seconds here. And we're going to set that to 0, actually. Make sure you set that to 0, not 3. Okay, cool. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to handle dealing damage. So I'm going to create a function here called deal damage. And it's going to take in an amount, and we're going to say that the amount should be a number, right? So if I hover over this now, it'll say that it's a number constructor, so it's looking for a number. Okay, cool. So the first thing we're going to do is adjust the health on getting hit. So you can do like a variety of stuff for this. We're just gonna have one set number, but if you want to do a calculation before you call this, maybe in your game you have armor and different swords to do different damage or something, then this is a good like mechanic to have, because this function just accepts that number and kind of does the health mechanic in terms of like, am I dead or not? Okay, cool. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say this.health. And I'm just going to do this the long way. It's much easier for people to understand, and then sometimes in different languages it doesn't really accept like the minus equal. So we're just going to do it that way. In case you guys were wondering, you're free to do it the other way if it doesn't work. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to check if we are dead. We're going to say if this health is less than or equal to 0. So if you had 100 health, you took 1,000 damage, you're going to be below 0. So just make sure you have that less than check. Otherwise, you'll run into some issues. So not 100, less than or equal to 0. And what we're going to do is we're going to set is dead to true because we lost all our health, so we're dead. And then we'll do some quick cleanup here. So we're going to say the respawn ticker is equal to a new number. 0. Basically, we're just setting it back to maybe perhaps this number was at 1 or something. Like it doesn't matter to us. We're just going to be safe, and we're going to set it back to what we want it, so it'll always be, in our case, a 3-second respawn. Okay, cool. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to do some stuff inside index when it calls this function. So we're going to return is if it's dead or not, right? So if this doesn't happen, most likely we're not dead. If it does happen, we change the flag and then we send it back. Okay, cool. Okay, so we're going to scroll down here to our collision destroy. Okay, so this socket event gets called when a bullet hits something. That could be another tank, it could be a wall, it doesn't really matter. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick check through everybody to just check to see if it was somebody that we could hit, and then if so, we're going to apply the damage. So we're going to put a little space between these two things. Okay, so I'm just going to run this last because that checks that the bullets basically is gone, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say we will most likely only have, oh, that's my bad. Okay, my bad. Okay, we're gonna back this up here. We need to go through the loop here. I'm trying to do other stuff. Okay, cool. So we're gonna back this up a minute. And what we're gonna do is we already filtered out all the bullets that that match the ID that came in. Most likely it's gonna be 1, right? So, but just in case, we're gonna have the loop. Okay, so we're gonna have a flag called let player hit. Okay, and basically the idea here is if a player was hit. Okay, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna check if we hit someone that is not us, right? Like the activator. So when we fire the bullet, we add who the activator is up here. So just as a check, just make sure it's not us, right? Okay, cool. So we're gonna do a for loop here. We're gonna say variable, we're gonna say player ID in players. So because it's a dictionary, it's gonna return us not like the player object itself, it's gonna return us like the ID number, which is like that randomized 8-digit character that that we assign every player. And then we're gonna say if bullet activator is not equal to player ID. So it's not the person who shot the bullet, right? We don't want to check through the who shot the bullet, because if you say there were 2 tanks beside each other and you shot the bullet, it would collide with that tank, and in theory you guys would be close enough to both get hit, quote unquote, by the bullet. So we just want to prevent that. Okay, so inside there we're going to say let player. So let's grab the player object and we're going to say players at player ID. So we don't have to call players at player ID anymore. We can just call player now. And we're going to grab the distance between the bullet and the player. So this is going through all players in the game except for the player that shot the bullet. If you're only playing with 2 people, it's going to be the other person. If you're playing with like 10 or whatever, it's going to be the other 9. Okay, and we're going to say, so the bullet dot position, and it's a vector 2, and the vector 2 class has a nice neat function called distance with a capital D, and it requires another vector 2. If you hover over it, there we go. So it requires another vector 2 basically to check the distance between them. So we're going to pass in player dot position. Cool, and that's going to return us the distance between those two guys. So just from my tweaking, and this is a value that you guys can tweak yourself. Basically, if the distance is less than 0.65, that kind of includes like the long part of the tank, because the position of the tank is relative to the center of the tank. So if you have your long, like the front and the back is a little longer than the sides, you kind of have to imagine a circle around it, right? So like when I say distance is less than 65, imagine if I drew a circle around the bullet's position. Anything that the radius is 0.65, and anything that fits inside that got, in theory, hit. Okay, so we're going to say if it's less than 65, we're going to do our dead check, and that's because we're going to call player.deal damage. Okay, and that's the function that we just created. And just for testing sake, we're going to say 50. So we set the player's health to 100. So we're going to say take half of their health for testing. If you want to change this number, if you want like one hit or whatever, depending on the gun, like I say, like depending on the gun or depending on the weapon they have, can deal more damage. This is where you would perhaps maybe go into the player that shot the bullet, the activator, and then be like, hey, what weapon do you have? Oh, okay, this is like a sniper, so it's going to deal 100 damage because it hit you, sort of thing. So you can play around with that if you want. Okay, so if it's dead, we're going to do just a nice little console log here. We're going to say player with ID. We'll say player.id. And then, there we go, space inside of it, has died. So this will just pop on the console that somebody has died. And we're going to build just nice like return data. So we're going to build out 2 new events that are going to happen. So we're going to build them out here, and then we're going to send them over to the client as well. They're mostly just like client-side events. The server's calling it, and the client doesn't really ever call them in return. Okay, so for this event, we're just going to handle the player ID. So basically, the idea for this event is that when the player dies, we're going to send an event to the player and to everybody else that this player ID has died, and we're just going to turn their game object off. So that'll take away their controls and all that. And then after 3 seconds, we'll just turn their game object back on with their position changed. So it'll look like they respawned. Okay, cool. So we're going to say sockets, and we have the player ID already. So we're going to grab that guy. We're going to say emit. And we're going to call this player died. We're going to pass in return data. Okay, cool. Okay, so we'll copy this, bring it down to the function. So that sends it to our player, right? And we're going to do a broadcast that'll send it to every other player. Cool. We're going to have an else on this guy. So if we're not dead, we're just going to say console.log player with ID player.id has, and we're just going to kind of like output their health. So we're going to say player.health. Say health left. So like if you're testing other weapons or whatever in the console, it'll be like, okay, this guy's at 50, this guy's at 75, whatever health they have left, right? Okay, and then we are going to change up. So right now, in our old stuff, we have a flag that like the bullet's been destroyed, and then we remove it at the top. We're going to keep that, but if they have died, like, so if we've hit the player, we should just destroy the bullet right away. We don't want to see any artifacting. So we're going to create a function called despawning the bullet, and then we're going to call that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to keep this little guy, but we're going to wrap it in if the player hasn't been hit. So we have this tag up here if the player's been hit, if the player hasn't been hit. Okay, and then we'll destroy the bullet that way. So if the player's been hit up here, we can say player hit is equal to true. And then that way if it goes down, it's fine. Okay, so if we haven't hit the player, we'll destroy the bullet naturally like it does. Beautiful. And we're gonna have a function here called despawn bullet. And we're gonna pass in the bullet itself. So that's gonna be something that we create inside this class here. Okay, cool. Make sure it says this dot despawn. Okay, cool. So we're gonna go ahead and create that despawn function here. So this is right above the connection IO. We're just gonna say function. We're gonna say despawn bullet, and it's gonna be a bullet of the type bullet. So if you hover over this, it's gonna be looking for a bullet that comes in. So then it'll kind of give you like a little bit of IntelliSys, but mostly just looking for a certain type and not just like a generic object. So we're gonna say destroying bullet. And actually, if I just grab, where is it? Just grab this stuff here. We can just cut it. We'll paste it below. We'll organize it. And then I'll start finishing this. Now I'm just gonna put bullets.id, and then this just allows us to know which bullet got destroyed, and then we're calling this. Okay, so I took away this because we're just gonna call destroyed bullet. There's no point in having the same logic twice. So we're just gonna call the function itself. And when that was turned off, that means down here we can just take away this. So make sure you come back down to 146 here inside the distance check, and just make it the function itself, not this dot that. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So now we are going to do like the respawning. We'll set that up, and then we'll go and set stuff up in the client to handle those two events that we did. I just figured it would be nice to get all the server stuff done right now, and then we can go back and do that. Okay, cool. So we're gonna go into our player, and we're gonna just have a function, and we're gonna call it respawn counter. So this is gonna happen in that interval loop that if the player is dead, we're gonna start counting. Okay, so we got a respawn ticker, and just like I said before, I'm just going to do this. It's just a lot easier to do it the longer way. If you'd like to do it the other way, feel free. This just makes it easier for newish people, and sometimes the language doesn't support it. Okay, cool. So we're going to say if the ticker, we're going to add to the ticker, and then we're going to say if the ticker is greater than or equal to, there's most likely it's just going to be equal to 10, but I mean, there's a chance it could go over, right? Make sure you check it. Better be safe than sorry. Okay, so if the respawn ticker is greater than 10, we're going to set that to back to 0. Okay. And then we're going to say that the respawn time is equal to the respawn time plus 1, right? So if we counted to 10, that would be 1,000 milliseconds, which is 1 second. And then in that case, we've went 1 second, so we can change our respawn to 1 second. For this purpose, we're going to do a 3-second respawn. Cool. This respawn time is greater than or equal to 3. Like again, it's going to be 3, but just in case. Gonna be safe than sorry. Alright, so we're gonna say that we're gonna be respawning player ID. Let's say this ID, because we're inside the player, so we don't have to say player ID anymore. Cool. Okay, and then let's set is dead back to false. this dot respawn ticker is equal to a new number, right? We're just setting everything back to like its default. This dot respawn time. Let's set their health back to 100. So they're back at full health so they can die again. And then the last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna respawn a position. So for now, I'm just gonna set this to like a hard vector. In the future, you're gonna have respawn points and stuff, whether it's in a JSON file on the server, or maybe an array or something. You can grab a random one from there, or you could grab one based on the team spawn or something. But for now, I'm just gonna put a random value. This doesn't really work for your testing, as you didn't build like a level identical to mine. You feel free to change this like to 0, 0 or whatever. Like it doesn't matter. And when I get to like a more polishing stage, so the idea here is that like I get all these like base mechanics of the game done. Then I'll start going into more like nitty gritty things like logins and like setting up rooms. Because right now it's just like one game, right? Queues, that sort of stuff. Then we're going to go back and do some polish, right? So we'll do like a screen that when it's doing the countdown from 3, we'll actually be like 3, 2, 1 or something. And then it'll be like, go. Stuff like that. So for right now, we're just kind of setting up the mechanics, getting the feel of how everything's built. And then we'll get into the nitty gritty after that, right? Okay, cool. So after we've done that, we're gonna do return true. And then at the bottom here, we're gonna say return false. Okay, cool. So the idea here is basically, have I respawned? Okay, cool. Now let's set this up. So, like I was saying before, this interval, we're gonna do another check here. So we're gonna do handle dead players, and this is gonna be a function call. I'm just gonna do it here, and like I said, once we start getting the nitty gritty stuff, we're gonna start breaking this out into like rooms and that sort of stuff, and then it'll look a little bit more organized. So if you're starting to see like spaghetti everywhere, just know it will get organized in future videos. Okay, cool. So we're gonna grab the player by the player ID here again, and you have to do it this way when you map the ID. So like when you're doing like, if you just add things to an array, you could do a bullet dot for each, but you can't do that. Oh, well, that was a good check. Okay, make sure this is outside the bullet for loop. There we go. Okay, you don't want it inside the bullet for loop, otherwise for each bullet you're gonna do this check and it's gonna go ape shit. Okay, so because it's its own thing. So yeah, if you have an array of things that you're pushing into, then you can do a for each like that. But if you're doing like a mapped array, like we did with the players and the sockets, you kind of have to do it this way. Okay, cool. So if player dot is dead, okay, right? Because we're setting it basically if their health goes to 0, we're setting them is dead. We're gonna say is respawn, and we'll say player dot respawn counter. And that's that new function we just made. Okay, so if they've respawned, right? So if we've counted 10 ticks and done it 3 times for 3 seconds, we're no longer dead and we're returning true. Okay, so we basically respawned. So we're gonna say let return data equal to, and we're just gonna set up the return data. So we're gonna pass in the player ID so we know which game object to turn back on, and then we're also changing its position. And we're gonna send X position. We're gonna say player dot position dot X Y player dot position dot Y. Okay, cool. And so yeah, so basically we respawn them at a different position, so we need to send positional data. It doesn't really matter like their tank rotation stuff, it's gonna get fixed by the client, right? We just need to send that information. So we're gonna say sockets player ID dot emit, and the other one, this is the second function we're gonna do. We're gonna say player respawn go. Pass in return data. Cool. We'll copy that line. I'll say dot broadcast. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna start up the server here. You probably already had yours started, but we're gonna start her up here. Okay, server is started. So I'm gonna just drag this off to the side for now. We're gonna come into here, and you're gonna open up your network client. Okay? So in our network client, we have to add a couple functions. So we're gonna scroll right to the bottom under server unspawn, and we're gonna say on player died. So we have player died and player respawn, and that's gonna bring us in an inline function here. And it's going to throw in some variables. Okay, cool. And that's going to be double quotes because we're in C# now. And while we're waiting, we'll just copy that. And we'll say player respawn. Beautiful. All right, cool. So both of them have the ID. So I'm just going to kind of grab these two lines from here. I'm just going to copy and paste them. And then, so when the players died, what I was saying before is we're just going to kind of turn off the game object. That eliminates them from being able to do any kind of control, which is kind of handy. So we're just going to kind of grab that object. We're going to say the network identity. We're going to say the game object that's attached to it. We're going to say set active, and then we're going to say false. So this is a built-in just game object call. Okay, cool. So I'm going to scroll up because there's no point in kind of typing it in. I'm just going to grab from server spawn. I'm going to grab positional data. You can type it if you want. It really doesn't matter. I'm just kind of lazy. Okay, cool. There's no point in typing it out if you don't have to. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn this back on. Okay, cool. And we also moved its position, right? So the server moved its position. That position hasn't been updated to the client yet. So before we turn them back on, let's just quickly set their new position. So we're going to say network identity.transform.position is equal to new vector 3. It's going to be x, y, and then 0. So that's the same as above when you're just setting your position. All right, cool. So the server's running. We're going to let this guy boot up. And we'll get the other client working. Okay, cool. So I'm just moving the other client on the other screen right now. If you guys still haven't done your symbol link, make sure you guys check out my mini guide on my page. Okay, cool. So this is our character, and they are roaming around as the other guy. And we shoot bullets, right? They hit the wall, they destroy. And if we shoot bullets, they hit our character. If I bring over the server, you'll see that player with that ID has now 50 health. Okay. And if I come back over here and I shoot him again, he now has 0 health, and now he's been disabled from the screen. And you can see my testing map's a little different for its positional thing. And after 3 seconds, he's now respawned. Okay. And if this was on your client, you wouldn't see your character. They would just disable and respawn, and then now I could shoot this guy again from across the map, and he should die after 2, and he's just going to respawn back to that position. Okay, cool. Same with the bullet, by the way. The bullet, like its smoothness, we're going to kind of do like a client side like smoothness and stuff. That's just going to be in a future video for like polish and stuff. So if it's like really bothering you, you guys can join the Discord or whatever, and I can kind of help you on like how you would achieve that, or like anything that kind of like is gonna be a future tutorial. If you like really need it, just make sure you guys join the Discord, and I'll try and help you as best as I can. Okay, cool. So that's the end of our video. We're gonna start getting into like a little bit of like nitty gritty stuff. With the first one kind of being rooms. So the idea for rooms is that like multiple games, right? We're gonna have one server playing with multiple games and a queue system for queuing up into a game. So I think that will kind of set us up for doing a little bit more polish, having these games and having different menus and that sort of stuff. And make sure you guys check out, I'm going to have future like mini guide tutorials on how we're going to be doing like the different scene management stuff. So I'm going to be going over it quite fast in our new tutorials. But if you need an in-depth on like how I'm doing all these multiple scene stuff, I'll also have that video ready to go around the same time. Okay, well, thank you guys for checking out the video. And we'll see you guys next time. Just wanted to make sure I give a nice shout out to the people over on Patreon that help me support and help me do Twitch and YouTube tutorials. So thank you. And you guys will be in the following list. Jaron Frost. Hey everyone, if you guys liked the video, make sure you guys click that subscribe button, give it a like, and make sure to comment. It really helps out. And if you guys are looking to support the project further, I also have my Patreon, which will be linked in the description down below. Thank you, and have a good day.